We only have a few minutes because we're going to start Slichas, which is the preparatory prayers, tefillos, before Rosh Hashanah. Today is day 2. But I do want to cover some aspect of what Rosh Hashanah is according to Chassidus. We're starting a new mimer today, L'Hovin Inyan Rosh Hashanah, which is from 1956, or really 1955, from the Rebbe. The Rebbe begins the mimer as follows. L'Hovin, we need to understand what's the concept, what's the idea, what is Rosh Hashanah. Because we know that the idea of Rosh Hashanah is that on this day the world was created. As Chazal tell us, as our sages teach us, B'Tishrei Nivra Ha'olam. In the month of Tishrei, the world was created. What's the content? What does Rosh Hashanah really represent? It's Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha. This is the day of the beginning of your actions, of your deeds, of your doings. What do you mean? This sounds like it's present. It's not an anniversary of something. Rather, it's happening now. Which means that every year on Rosh Hashanah, the life source, the energy, the sustaining godly forces that are in the world, they get concealed, they move out of the world, and a new energy comes in. So every single year, there's a switch, and last year's life source, last year's vitality is gone, and there's a new one, which is a very, very important thing, because that tells us that we have some ability on Rosh Hashanah to impact that new chayes. It's not just another page on the calendar. It's not just a new beginning, but there's actually a completely transformed, different, new energy that comes into the world. And the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah, how do we fulfill this? How do we connect with this? How do we commemorate this day and realize this situation of the new chayes coming? It's through the mitzvah of shofar. As the Mishnah tells us, that the mitzvah, the command, the call of the hour of Rosh Hashanah is shofar. So you have to understand, what are all these elements, what do they all have to do with each other? Rosh Hashanah, which is a new chayes, the concept of Rosh Hashanah, that it's the beginning of creation, because there's a new energy that comes in, and the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah, which is shofar. 8:30, yes. What's the idea that shayachim ukshurim adam atz dafka, that they're connected and have a shaychus to the person specifically? So we have 3 things. Number 1, Rosh Hashanah is the day the world was created, and as Chazal tell us, they just teach us that Tishrei, the world was created during Tishrei, and the concept is this is the day, the beginning of your doings. That's number 1. Number 2, that on Rosh Hashanah, the energy, the vitality, the life force of the world goes into concealment and it leaves, and we have to bring forth a new energy. And number 3, that the mitzvah of the day is shofar. What is the connection between all these 3 elements, and why is it specifically connected to the person? The idea is that what happened in Rosh Hashanah, it's the day when the world was created. Now, the world was created in 6 days. And Rosh Hashanah is set for when? For the 6th day of creation, right? The day that Adam Harishon, the first person, was created. Similarly, the Teichen of Rosh Hashanah, which is the idea of bringing forth a new hamshacha, a new flow of energy, is also specifically regarding the person. Because all other elements of creation, they have their judgment on different dates, right? We know the new year of trees, for example, or the new year for animals, or other new years that happen. This Rosh Hashanah, when you have a new life force in the world that is taking place, transpiring on the day, that the anniversary of creation of man, and it affects man because that's when the new energy comes into the world, and we're the only ones that recognize this day or do anything with it. For the rest of creation, for the animal kingdom, for vegetation and so on, they do not have this aspect, or this thing of commemorating and really celebrating this day. For example, the first day of Elul is the Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema. When it comes to tithing animals, you have to do it once a year. What's the year for the animal? So the Gemara tells us in Masechta Rosh Hashanah that is on Rosh Hashanah. And the same thing is for other types of creations. Each one has a special day, which is their day of judgment, but it's not on Rosh Hashanah. And this is the idea, that Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of your doings for man specifically, for the human. As it says, that it was the day of the beginning of your doings. Now, the same applies also for Shofar. Because if you look at the details of the mitzvah of Shofar, it has to be done by the person himself. It has to be a Jew who is required to do the mitzvah. He has to do it. Now, if the sound of the shofar came through some other way, I'm not sure what the other way could be, a automatic thing, or you figured out a way that you could pump something and it'll blow. You could maybe it's a trained monkey that's doing it, whatever it may be. But it's not from the person. It's not the mitzvah of shofar. So shofar has an element to it that it has to come from the person specifically. So we have to understand, why are all these things of Rosh Hashanah associated with man? One more thing, and then we'll go to Slichas regarding the idea of shofar. The pasuk says, the Gemara tells us that Hashem said, "Say before me verses of Malchios." They talk about crowning Hashem as king, and I'll be your king. Say Zichronos, verses which talk about Hashem remembering us, and then I'll remember you for the good. How do you do that? Through shofar. The question is, why do you have to blow shofar? If saying the verses is what does it, as our sages teach us, that when you say in davening about Malchias, crowning Hashem as king, you're making him king. And when you speak about remembering, that Hashem remembers us, he remembers us for good. So why is it not enough? Why do you specifically have to blow shofar? So, God willing, tomorrow I'll be able to continue. Now I'm going to stop for Slichas. Have a wonderful day. Like, share, subscribe.